Research and assessment are important to the social sciences, and family therapy is no different. So Chapter 7 looks at some of the important aspects of research and assessment that are relevant to family therapy and to the field. Some of the objectives include discussing the different types of research methods available to practitioners of family therapy, exploring the place of assessment in family therapeutic approaches, and looking at research findings in family therapy. Research is vitally interlinked with family therapy, as is assessment. Most of the pioneers in family therapy employed research-based procedures to evaluate and work with families. In the 21st century, family therapy has become even more redefined in its research and focus on real-life context, and the assessment of families is becoming stronger. 5 important reasons for research. Knowledge, it informs therapists about phenomena. Confirmation and verification, it demonstrates the efficacy of techniques and procedures. Accountability, it provides a means to show services are grounded in science. Practicality, it pays off in the long run. And uniqueness, it's a way of distinguishing itself from other fields. Research findings in family therapy. Findings from research on family therapy indicate in general that most individuals and families improve when they receive couple and family therapy. Contributions by PSYC, the development of brief strategic family therapy, the formulation of structural ecosystems therapy, the development of the strategic family systems rating, the creation of one-person family therapy, the efficacy of individual psychodynamic and child therapy versus family therapy. 2 types of family therapy research are both quantitative and qualitative. A lot of times we look at quantitative, you see the N in quantitative, we think numbers, and with qualitative, with the L, we think language. So quantitative approaches grew out of the scientific traditions of physics, chemistry, and biology, and often include numbers or numerical data that's collected. And then qualitative approaches are rooted in the traditions of anthropology and sociology. They use words or other means, and it's participatory evaluation research. Difficulties in family therapy research include the complexity of relationships within family. They're very subjective, they're very dynamic and ever-changing. Time commitment needed to study the effects of family therapy. It can be very intense in terms of the time commitment. Getting families, especially family members, to participate in research projects can be challenging. And there are many ethical and regulatory standards aimed at reducing the risk of harm in family research. And so the National Research Act, the Belmont Report, these are ethical and regulatory standards or reports that have yielded results that have developed specific guidelines for research with families. The way in which research is designed affects the overall results. There are 5 categories, just kind of basic categories that we look at in terms of research design, especially in regards to families. Exploratory or qualitative designs that are used to better define issues. Descriptive actually describes specific variables or phenomena of interest. Development, look at stages over time, especially lifespan development, when we're looking at families or different stages of families. Experimental, look more at the cause and effect relationship, so they adhere to classic hard science methodologies such as using hypotheses and dependent-independent variables. And correlational studies look at associations or relationships between or among variables. So they don't look at cause and effect, but they can establish relationships. Sampling, or finding samples from a population, the participants that we're actually going to use in terms of research. Probability samples draw from a known population with the possibility of calculating the likelihood of each case being included in the sample. Simple random sampling, each person in a population has an equal chance of being selected. Systematic random assignment, the first family selected at random, then every nth family is automatically included. So when I'm talking about nth, it's like every 10th or every 12th family. Stratified sample is random samples are drawn from different strata or groups of a population. That could be from specific geographical areas, specific financial background, or economic or educational status. Non-probability samples are used when representation of a whole population is less important than the information itself. Convenience, using easy to access families, maybe from an agency where you work or an organization. Snowball techniques are asking participating individuals to refer other individuals. And then purposive sampling is choosing participants because they're believed to be representative of the study population. Instrumentation, so these would be things like different tools or surveys or other instruments that we may use. So self-report instruments, these are ones in which people answer or respond to specific questions or information External validity and construct validity are here, so it can be generalizable back to the population. The results could be, and also the instrument is measuring what it's reported to measure. So these are considerations that we'd have with some of these self-report instruments. And then direct observational assessment. So a lot of times we'd have people actually observing or watching or coding specific behaviors or phenomenon. And so inter-rater reliability is something to be considered. And this is the degree to which raters or people who are coding or judging this agree on what they observe. Procedures of how families are studied. There are many different methods for studying families, and these are not neutral because of biases that are represented by the researcher or the investigator. And so these are reflected in the epistemology of those investigators or researchers. So again, it's subjective, or there are some assumptions that may be there. So it's important to consider that and look at some of those limitations that may arise. Evidence-based research is akin to outcome research. The available research evidence bearing on whether and why a treatment works, and so a lot of times that's established through replicated studies over time and is directly connected to the methods that are used. Theory and statistics. Well-designed research is based on questions that have usually arisen from a theory and oftentimes established theories. Most family therapy is based on general systems theory. Statistically reported research needs to be clinically relevant and readable to practitioners as well as scientists. So if researchers are out here collecting data, but there's no way to apply it, or for practitioners to apply it, it's almost useless in a lot of ways. So there needs to be communication that's helpful and effective for clinicians and scientists. So normal distribution is important when reporting statistics. Validity is the extent to which a measuring instrument measures what it's intended to measure. There are three main measures of validity: content, and this looks at how well a measure taps the full range of dimensions or meaning of some underlying construct; criterion, which is how well a measurement predicts or correlates with external criteria; and then construct, this is how well a measure correlates with measures or similar construct. Reliability is the consistency or dependency of a measure. Perfect reliability is expressed as a correlational coefficient of 1, which is seldom achieved, but that would be a perfect correlation or a perfect relationship. An instrument can be reliable or consistent without being valid or accurate. However, an instrument cannot be valid or accurate without being reliable or consistent. The importance of assessing families. An assessment procedure is any method used to measure characteristics of people, programs, or objects. An assessment is a vital part of family therapy. Through assessment, therapists can gain information that helps them diagnose and respond systematically and appropriately to families. And as you can imagine, assessment tools and the way that families are assessed may be very different depending on the theoretical background and premise of the actual therapist. Dimensions of assessing families are mostly based on a systemic approach. Questions asked in family therapy are generally focused on transactions and relationships. Fishman suggested 4 aspects of assessment for family therapists: contemporary developmental pressures on the family, the history of the family, the structure of the family, and the process or processes of the family. Methods used in assessing families. Informal methods of assessments, such as couples creativity assessment task, the family assessment form, and direct observation of the therapist or researcher. Formal methods of assessment. There are more than 1,000 instruments available to family therapists to assess families and couples. And they would need to be chosen, selected based on the characteristics of the family and the survey instrument and how well they match up. They cover such diverse areas as intimacy, power, parenthood, adjustment, communication, all different types of topics as connected to the family. And they all have different methods in terms of psychometric properties, reliability, validity, different roles in research. So it's important to assess your assessment tools as well. Common formal assessment instruments that are used: Caring Days Inventory, Family of Origin, the Locke-Wallace Marital Adjustment Scale, Myers-Briggs Type Inventory, Beavers-Timberlawn Family Evaluation Scales, the Family Adaptability and Cohesion Scale, and the McMaster Family Assessment Device. So these are commonly used, but again, not an exhaustive list of assessment instruments because, as mentioned, there are more than 1,000 instruments out there. So once again, research and assessment are important to the process. This is just, again, a very brief overview. We could talk a lot more about research and have an entire semester just about research practices and procedures, and likewise assessment, working with families, because assessment may be viewed differently based on the theoretical perspective. But again, these are important facets of not just family therapy, but also just working in social sciences in general.